Welcome, dear viewers, to the DVC Board Game University. Now please do not be trepidatious, as there's no endless writing and homework here. Because instead of textbooks and whiteboards, our curriculum involves cracking open games and letting that be our education. My name is Benji, and this is 10 levels of complexity in area control games. We'll be starting the list with the easy peasy, this probably doesn't even need instructions, all the way up in complexity to the you're gonna need to lay down after playing it games. One does assume at this point you already know what area control is. However, as a quick primer, it's a reference to when multiple players occupy a given space and gain benefits based on their presence. Technically, area control dictates that at the end of each turn someone should be in actual, control and receive the lion's share if not all of the benefits, often achieved by some form of battle or conflict during the turn. But there's another term that's often used as well, area majority, which is less conflict based and rather provides a proportionate benefit based on how big each player's presence is. So with that clarity out the way, join me please as we count from 1 to 10. Number 1, and a game with the most lightly sprinkled dust of complexity you can imagine, is Las Vegas, which laces in area control with dice rolling and what amounts to, at least indirectly, auction and bidding as well. With your 8 dice rolled each round, you'll take all of the dice of one facing and place it on the respective map, representing a casino. Keep doing this until you run out of dice and win the payout if you have the most presents at the end of the turn. So simple you could probably unbox the game and play just from this overview. Aha, what a lovely way to ease you in to this turf war, my things are bigger than your things, board gaming lark. Number 2 on our list is 8 Minute Empire, a game that adds a little bit more agency into proceedings and a larger scope, as technically it's a super light civilization game. And this is all achieved without causing anyone to break a sweat. Drafting cards is the enabler for all this territory supremacy. Each card you pick will enable an action, first and foremost of which is spreading your cubes of influence across the map. But you'll also be obtaining goods that add some set collection to proceedings. There's some clever and distilled execution here, and it's a wonderful stepping stone into more complex games as we warm up and move through the semester. Number 3 sees us opening a bigger box for the first time. Ethnos is a game I highly respect for its ability to teach new board gamers some of the many tropes they'll find on their journey through the hobby. As it's on this list though, you ain't getting nowhere without bossing real estate, and to do so you're going to be drafting cards and managing your hand to ensure you can subsequently play either sets of the same tribe or of the same colour. And so long as you place more cards than you already have chips in the coloured region of one of your cards, then you're good to grow your stack taller. The fact that each tribe has its own action attached to it when you play your cards is further sugar on top of a highly accessible and well-rounded game. Next up at number 4 is Small World, arguably the last game in this catalogue you'd want to play with someone that had never played a board game before. Another factions on a map type game, but one that fully embraces the ups and downs of land grabbing. Principally speaking, because you start as one faction, do as much elbows out and expansion as you've got the resources for, and then gobble up as many points as possible before the inevitable decline of your empire. Rinse and repeat that process, and that's Small World in a nutshell. Did I mention that each time you pick a faction it also comes with a different special ability each game? Oh, and there are literally tiles all over the place come the end of the game, which leaves you with a very vanilla game, but a warm and welcoming one nonetheless. Number 5. The pre-midway point is Inis, which isn't a huge step up in rules depth from Small World, but complexity isn't derived just from the rules bulk, but from the depth of strategy. And this is where Inis delivers with minis on a map and card play dictating the action. We're also now closed drafting, where you pick a card and pass the rest round until everyone has a full hand. This enables you to recruit new armies, move them around the board, build fortifications and sanctuaries that can help or hinder you depending on who instigates a scuffle, and then it's all about pushing, pulling, jostling and hustling your way to a dominant position on an ever expanding board as best you can. There's region specific abilities when you're dominant in a space, and special abilities you can obtain as you go. But this entry is definitely where things start to get cutthroat and unforgiving. Okay, so before we proceed, how's about some half-time oranges? Because numbers 5 and 6 on this list had so many candidates, it was unbelievable. And so, to avoid the inevitable flaming that's coming my way, I bring you 2 honourable mentions that very almost made this list into this midpoint area. First is a nod to the godfather of modern area control games, El Grande. Drafting knights, plonking them on the board, once again cards dictating the action, first to determine turn order and your pool of knights, and then to determine how to place them. A bona fide classic that stood the test of time. Second honour meant is Blood Rage, a Viking themed midweight game where close drafting and sequencing your actions is paramount, jostling for the right to pillage territories around the central free-for-all region, and upgrading your clan's stats to enable improved board presence, greater glory in battle and more action points. B-Rage is oft labelled a gateway game, which, even if you can't agree on what that means, does assume that there's a magnetism to this game that would have otherwise been fitting for the midpoint of this list. But our number 6, aka the post-midway point, is a heavily combat-driven game, whose latest iteration is entitled Kemet, Blood and Sand. There is no avoiding the fact that we're getting to the games with some real heft at the table now. Complexity doesn't necessarily increase in concert with table presence, but there's often a correlation. The game itself is highly combat-centric area control, so plenty of placing troops, moving them, upgrading your tech, and playing stronger units and special abilities and so on and so forth. Conflict resolution is again card driven, so luck should even itself out in the wash at the end of the game. Kemet is probably the most straightforwardly aggressive game on this list. It's also a testament to the fact that increased complexity can start to mean a game is harder to pin down to just one overriding mechanic. Which is very true of our number 7. I kept asking myself whether Scythe was in this spot just because I like it a great deal, or am I over-egging the area control elements of the game to shoehorn it in? Either way, I stuck with my guns, because although this is certainly not area majority, there's never 2 factions in one place at the end of a turn, pseudo combat sees the loser shuffling off back to home base. But it is definitely area control in the huddle for specific locations of game objective importance that give you the resources you need or provide a platform to further expand your influence. In many ways, that makes it the flip side of the coin to Kemet. Here it's more about your engine and how you can meet as many of the diverse endgame objectives as you can, rather than actively seeking out conflict. We're also striding now towards that next level of complexity, especially with this coming trio of games. Number 8, you could argue, could be number 9 for reasons I'll explain, but ultimately Root sits in this space because the shared mechanics and the phases of a turn are all variations on a fairly straightforward mechanical theme that ultimately belies the game's overall complexity. Sitting in both camps of area majority and control, there's not always a definitive outcome for each battle. And as I've already mentioned, the rudiments of this game are not particularly difficult to learn. But when you add the asymmetric factions into the mix, all of a sudden you find that you got your hands well and truly full, where your objectives and how you go about achieving them are completely different to everyone else's. Root is rightly considered a classic, but it's its asymmetry that's almost exclusively the reason for its place this late in the list. A game that rewards multiple plays more than most, as the gameplay package as a whole is a lot to get your head around. On the other hand, our number 9, Spirit Island, which is categorised as brain-burning and rightly so, but I've always found, thanks to its uniform and consistent logic and its forewarning of what's to come, go a long way in flattening its learning curve. It's also the first cooperative game on this list that finds you taking control of spirits that are dead set on encouraging invading colonists that they are not welcome on their patch, in so doing providing the natives with some support. Area of influence in this game is absolutely crucial, as it's your platform for stemming and pushing back the tide of those pesky intruders. No doubt to some its perceived complexity is because it can be very challenging. Getting to grips with the strengths and weaknesses of your spirit, knowing when to play your abilities that go off before the colonists act, and when to enact those that apply after, is part of the game. Furthermore, playing your part within your playgroup according to your spirit strengths is no easy feat. You'll honestly do well to find a more rewarding cooperative game with mechanics that are today's focus. But that just leaves us with our number 10. And make no bones about this, Cerebria, The Inside World, is a highly complex game that sees players teamwork inside one's mind. No joke, it turns out that thematically speaking games that feature spirits go hand in hand with complex area control games. Here, the theatre for area supremacy is the competing sides of a psyche, bliss and gloom. Cerebria is absent of any real combat, so passive exertion of influence over realms and frontiers is how it's done. Playing cards that represent emotions and enabling special abilities are the main ways you'll be competing minor and major objectives. And it's that central push-pull mechanic, a beautiful presentation, and the usual off-axis nature of Mind Clash Games' games that's so compelling. And because we're at number 10, also the reason you've swum far out to sea complexity wise, as both teams converge to trigger the endgame at just the right time to reign supreme. And so that there was and is and has been 10 levels of complexity found in area control / majority / influence gaming. Get these 10 games down your neck and you can consider yourself well and truly educated in the ways of spraying your scent and marking your territory. Alas, I have been the voice of Benji, and this video has ended.